Commander Lee Hyun was having another quiet day in deep space. He sat in his comfortable captain's chair on the bridge of the TDF, unyielding, watching the stars drift by through the main view screen. The ship was on routine patrol duty, checking the outer edges of human territory for any signs of trouble. These patrols were usually boring, but someone had to do them. The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. Communications Officer Park Mina monitored the radio channels, listening for any unusual signals. Engineering Officer Cho Min-sik kept an eye on the ship's systems. Navigator Kim So-young plotted their course through the empty void of space. It was just another normal day in the Terran Defense Fleet. Then everything changed in an instant. The communications console suddenly exploded with urgent beeping sounds. Red warning lights flashed across Park Mina's station as multiple alarms went off at once. She quickly started working on her controls, trying to figure out what was happening. "Sir, I'm picking up something strange," she called out to Commander Lee. Her voice carried a note of worry that made everyone on the bridge look up from their work. "There's an emergency transmission coming in on the distress frequencies." Commander Lee sat up straighter in his chair. Emergency transmissions were rare out here in the deep void. "Can you clean up the signal?" he asked. Park Mina's fingers moved quickly across her console, adjusting settings and filtering out static. "Working on it, sir. But there's something odd about this transmission. The signal pattern doesn't match anything in our database." "What do you mean?" Commander Lee asked, walking over to her station. "Sir," Park Mina said quietly, looking up at him with wide eyes, "I don't think this signal is coming from humans." The bridge fell completely silent. Everyone stopped what they were doing and stared at the communications officer. In all their years of space travel, humans had never encountered another intelligent species. They had explored dozens of star systems and found plenty of planets with simple life forms, but never anything that could build spaceships or send radio signals. "Are you sure?" Commander Lee asked. Park Mina nodded slowly. "The encryption patterns are completely different from ours. And the language, it's nothing like any human language I've ever heard." Commander Lee felt his heart start beating faster. This could be the most important moment in human history. "Put it through the universal translator," he ordered. The ship's computer worked for several seconds, analyzing the alien signal and trying to make sense of it. Finally, a mechanical voice began speaking through the bridge speakers, translating the alien words into Korean. The message was terrifying. "This is Colony Ship Harmony's voice calling any vessels in range. We are under attack by unknown hostile forces. They have disabled our engines and are boarding our ship. We are a peaceful people with no weapons. They are taking our families. Our children are crying. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need help. We cannot defend ourselves." The alien voice sounded desperate and afraid. In the background, they could hear strange sounds, weapons firing, metal being torn apart, and voices screaming in fear. Commander Lee grabbed the nearest communication device. "Get me Admiral Kim on the ironclad immediately," he ordered. Within minutes, Admiral Kim Dae-ho appeared on the main screen. The older man's face was serious as he listened to the translated alien message. His jaw tightened with anger as he heard the sounds of violence and terror coming from the alien ship. "Admiral," Commander Lee said, "what are your orders?" Admiral Kim was quiet for a moment, thinking carefully. Then, his expression hardened with determination. "All ships in the fleet, this is Admiral Kim. Set course for the source of that transmission at maximum speed. I want every weapon system online and every marine unit ready for combat." He paused, then continued with steel in his voice. "Today, we meet our first alien species, but we're not going as diplomats or explorers. We're going as soldiers. Someone is hurting innocent people, and that ends now." The human fleet turned toward the distant alien signal, ready to show the galaxy what happened when someone threatened the helpless. Captain Choi Minho stood on the bridge of his destroyer, watching the tactical screen with growing horror. 12. Human warships were racing through space at dangerous speeds. Their engines pushed far beyond what the manufacturers recommended. The metal hull of his ship groaned under the stress, but nobody cared about safety protocols right now. The alien distress call had been bad enough, but what they were hearing now made it so much worse. The ship's communication systems had managed to intercept radio transmissions from the attackers, and the universal translator was working overtime to make sense of the alien language. What they heard made every human on every ship feel sick to their stomach. "Cargo hold 7 is full," came one translated voice. "Start loading the young ones into cargo hold 8. The adult males are fighting back too much," said another. "Just dump them out the airlock." "These ones cry too loudly," complained a third voice. "Can we silence them permanently?" Lieutenant Yoon Soo-jin sat at her sensor station, her face pale as she monitored the long-range scanners. Her hands shook slightly as she worked her controls. "Captain," she called out, her voice barely steady, "I'm reading weapons fire at the target coordinates. Multiple ships are engaged in combat." Captain Choi moved to stand behind her. "Show me what you're seeing." The main view screen switched to long-range visual sensors. Even from millions of kilometers away, they could see the flashes of weapons, fire lighting up the darkness of space. But what made Captain Choi's blood freeze was what happened next. Small objects were being ejected from the larger ships. At first, it looked like normal space debris, but as the computer enhanced the image, the horrible truth became clear. These weren't pieces of metal or broken equipment. They were escape pods. Tiny civilian spacecraft that families used to flee from danger, and the attackers were systematically destroying every single one. "My God," whispered Navigator Park Jun-ho. "They're killing everyone who tries to escape." The bridge crew watched in stunned silence as another group of escape pods launched from what must have been the alien colony ship. The pods were small and clearly not designed for combat. They were just trying to get away from the violence. The attacking ships turned their weapons on the defenseless pods and opened fire. One by one, the little spacecraft exploded in silent flashes of light. Each explosion meant entire families had just died. "Sir," Lieutenant Yoon said quietly, "our long-range sensors are picking up life signs in those pods. They're killing civilians. They're killing children." Captain Choi felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. In all his years as a military officer, he had never seen anything so deliberately cruel. These attackers weren't just taking prisoners or stealing cargo. They were murdering anyone who couldn't be useful to them. He walked to his command chair and activated the fleet-wide communication system. Every captain in the human fleet would hear his next words. "All vessels, this is Captain Choi. I am issuing authorization code Omega-7. His voice was steady, but there was steel underneath it. "First contact protocols are officially suspended. We are no longer operating as explorers or diplomats." He paused, watching another escape pod explode on the screen. "As of right now, we are operating under Humanitarian Intervention Directive. These creatures are murdering innocent civilians. They are killing families who are just trying to escape." Captain Choi's jaw tightened as he continued. "I don't care what species they are, or where they come from. I don't care about their technology or their reasons. What I care about is that they are butchering helpless people, and that stops today." The other ship captains responded immediately. Weapon systems came online across the fleet. Marines began preparing their equipment for boarding actions. Medical teams readied their facilities for wounded survivors. "All ships," Captain Choi continued, "you are authorized to use any level of force necessary to stop this massacre. Show no mercy to anyone who would murder fleeing families." The human fleet surged forward through space. No longer explorers seeking new friends among the stars, but warriors coming to save the innocent from monsters. The human fleet suddenly dropped out of hyperspace like 12 angry hornets emerging from a tunnel. What they saw in front of them made every person on every ship feel a mixture of rage and heartbreak that would stay with them for the rest of their lives. A massive alien colony ship hung in space, its hull torn open in dozens of places. Smaller ships swarmed around it like vultures, firing weapons and cutting through the metal with industrial tools. Bodies floated in the vacuum of space, and debris from destroyed escape pods drifted everywhere. But it was the aliens themselves that truly shocked the humans. The surviving colonists, visible through the torn sections of their ship, were unlike anything anyone had imagined. They were tall and elegant, with pale blue skin that seemed to glow softly in the starlight. Their faces were gentle and kind, with large eyes that reminded the humans of deer or rabbits. Even in their terror and pain, there was something peaceful about them. These were not warriors. These were not soldiers. These were farmers, teachers, artists, and families who had probably never heard anything in their entire lives. Dr. Song Yuna worked frantically at her medical station, trying to make sense of the desperate voices coming through the communication channels. The ship's computer was struggling to translate the alien language, but slowly the words began to make sense. "Please, we surrender," came one voice, translated into Korean. "We give you everything we have. Just don't hurt our little ones." "We don't understand why you're doing this," said another. "We've never harmed anyone. What do you want from us?" "Help us," cried a third voice, this one clearly from someone very young. "Mama, where are you? I'm scared." Dr. Song looked up from her console with tears in her eyes. "Admiral Kim," she called across the bridge, "I've been analyzing their language patterns and social structure based on these transmissions." "What have you found?" Admiral Kim asked, though his attention was focused on the tactical display showing. "The attacking ships, sir. They call themselves Zephyrians." And Admiral ... Dr. Song paused, hardly believing what she was about to say. "They're completely pacifist. Their entire species has never experienced war or violence." "What do you mean?" asked Captain Lee, who was standing nearby. Dr. Song shook her head in amazement. "I mean, they literally don't have words in their language for concepts, like weapon or enemy or kill. The closest they have is a word that means tool for cutting plants. They don't even understand what's happening to them." The bridge fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. These gentle aliens were being slaughtered by predators, and they didn't even have the mental framework to comprehend deliberate violence. Suddenly, a new voice cut through the communications system. This one was different, harsh, cruel, and speaking in another alien language entirely. The computer quickly translated it. "Attention, unknown mammals," the voice said with obvious contempt. "I am Captain Vex of the Cathara Syndicate. These pathetic creatures belong to us now. Turn your ships around and leave this system immediately." The voice continued with a tone of casual cruelty that made everyone's skin crawl. "These Zephyrians make excellent slaves because they're too stupid to fight back. We've already harvested 3 of their colonies. Soon we'll come for yours too." Admiral Kim stepped forward to the communication console. His face was completely calm, but everyone who knew him recognized the dangerous stillness in his posture. This was how the Admiral looked right before he did something that would be talked about in military history books. "Unknown hostile vessels," Admiral Kim said, his voice so cold it could have frozen helium. "This is Admiral Kim Daeho of the Terran Defense Fleet. You have exactly 10 seconds to release all prisoners and surrender your vessels." The alien captain laughed, a sound like broken glass. "Or what, mammal? You'll run away crying like these blue weaklings." Admiral Kim's expression didn't change. "That was your only warning." He turned to his weapons officer. "All ships, weapons free. Show these monsters what happens when you hurt innocent people in front of humans." The Cathara captain was about to learn that humanity had spent millions of years becoming very, very good at protecting the helpless from predators. Admiral Kim stood in the secure briefing room aboard the flagship Ironclad, surrounded by his most trusted officers. The room was soundproof and heavily shielded. What they were about to discuss was classified at the highest levels of human government. Colonel Han Woo-jin, the fleet's Marine commander, sat at the conference table looking puzzled. Major Jung Haiwan, head of special operations, wore a similar expression. They had been called away from preparing their troops for the rescue mission, and they weren't sure why the Admiral needed to show them files right now. Before we engage these, Cathara, Admiral Kim said seriously, there's something you need to understand about humanity, something most people don't know. He activated the holographic display in the center of the room. Immediately, an image of Earth appeared, rotating slowly. But this wasn't the peaceful blue marble that appeared in tourism videos. This display showed Earth as it really was, a planet marked with warning symbols and danger classifications. What you're looking at, Admiral Kim began, is Earth's official classification in the Galactic database. Most humans have never seen this file. Colonel Han leaned forward, reading the text that appeared around the image. His eyes widened as he processed the information. Earth designation, Class 12 Deathworld, he read aloud. Sir, what does that mean? Admiral Kim's expression was grim. It means our planet is one of the most dangerous worlds ever discovered. The classification system goes from Class I, which are paradise worlds where nothing can hurt you, all the way up to Class 15, which are planets so deadly that even robots can't survive there. Major Jung studied the display more carefully. Gravity 1.2 times galactic standard, she read. Atmospheric pressure variable and often extreme. Weather patterns include violent storms, temperature swings of over 100 degrees. Keep reading, Admiral Kim said quietly. Population consists entirely of apex predators that evolved cooperative intelligence, Colonel Han continued. Dominant species shows pack hunting behavior, advanced tool use, and systematic warfare tactics. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Sir, Major Jung said slowly, this makes it sound like humans are monsters. Admiral Kim nodded. From the perspective of most galactic species, we are due. You know what the survival rate is for non-human species who try to live on Earth without environmental suits? What is it? Colonel Han asked. Less than 3%, Admiral Kim replied. Our world is so hostile that almost nothing else can survive there. The air we breathe would poison most aliens. The gravity we consider normal would crush their bones. The bacteria in our soil would kill them in hours. He gestured to another part of the display. But here's what makes us truly dangerous. Most death worlds produce solitary predators, creatures that hunt alone and fight alone. Earth produced something different. Earth produced predators that learned to work together. Major Jung was beginning to understand. We're pack hunters. Exactly, Admiral Kim confirmed. For millions of years, our ancestors survived by cooperating to bring down prey, much larger and stronger than themselves. We learned to plan, to coordinate, to sacrifice for the group. Colonel Han looked at the tactical display showing the Cathara ships. And these slavers have no idea what they're dealing with. None at all, Admiral Kim agreed. Look at how they operate. They attack peaceful species who can't fight back. They probably think all intelligent life is soft and weak like the Zephyrians. Captain Lee Suman, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. Sir, based on their communications, they clearly think we're just another helpless species they can intimidate. Admiral Kim smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. It was the smile of a predator who had just spotted easy prey. Then we need to educate them about what happens when Death World predators decide to protect innocent people. He turned to address all his officers. Gentlemen, ladies, for our entire history, humans have been the monsters that other monsters were afraid of. We are the apex predators from a world that produces nothing but apex predators. Colonel Han straightened in his chair, finally understanding why he had been called to this briefing. "What are your orders, Admiral?" Admiral Kim's voice became cold and hard. "Colonel, Major, gather your troops. It's time to show these Cathara why Earth is classified as a death world." He looked at each of his officers in turn. "Release the wolves. Let's remind the galaxy what happens when you threaten the innocent in front of humans." The officers left the briefing room with a new understanding of exactly what they were, and exactly what they were capable of doing to anyone who dared hurt helpless people. The airlocks of the human warships opened with a sharp hiss, and what came out was unlike anything the Cathara had ever seen in their centuries of raiding peaceful worlds. Captain Park Jong-soo stepped through the breach in the Cathara ship's hull, his combat armor moving with the fluid grace of a hunting cat. Behind him, 24 human marines followed in perfect formation. They didn't charge forward screaming like desperate warriors. They didn't hesitate like frightened civilians. Instead, they moved with the calm, methodical precision of apex predators who had found their prey. The Cathara security team that rushed to meet them expected what they always encountered: panicked resistance from soft species who had never seen real violence. They were used to aliens who stumbled over each other, who made noise, who fought without thinking. What they got instead was something that would haunt their nightmares, if any of them had lived long enough to have nightmares. The humans moved like ghosts through the corridors of the alien ship. Their boots made no sound on the metal floors. Their breathing was controlled and quiet. They communicated through hand signals and helmet displays, coordinating their movements with the kind of teamwork that only came from millions of years of pack hunting evolution. Sergeant Odahi led her squad of 6 Marines around a corner where 12 Cathara soldiers were setting up a defensive position. The aliens were large, reptilian creatures with natural armor and claws that could tear through steel. They had weapons that could punch holes through ship hulls. None of it mattered. The humans moved like water flowing around obstacles. One moment the corridor seemed empty, and the next moment the Cathara found themselves surrounded by figures in dark combat armor, who seemed to appear from nowhere. The fight lasted exactly 17 seconds. Dahi's team moved with such perfect coordination that the ship's security cameras couldn't keep track of them. The humans flowed around the Cathara positions, like they could predict where each alien would move before the aliens knew it themselves. Private Lee Minjin disabled 3 enemies before they could even raise their weapons. Corporal Kim Hassan eliminated 2 more, while simultaneously providing cover for her teammates. The other Marines moved in patterns that seemed almost like a dance, each one knowing exactly where the others would be. When the brief fight was over, 12 soldiers lay motionless on the deck. The 6 human Marines stood among them, their armor barely scratched, their breathing still calm and controlled. "Corridor secured," Sergeant O reported calmly into her communicator. "Moving to next objective." Meanwhile, Captain Park and his team had reached the ship's bridge through a different route. The Cathara captain and his officers had barricaded themselves behind emergency barriers, confident that their superior technology and numbers would protect them. They were wrong. The humans didn't try to break through the barriers. Instead, they accessed the ship's maintenance shafts and approached from directions the Cathara had never considered. While the aliens watched the main entrance, human Marines appeared from ceiling vents, floor panels, and side corridors. The Cathara captain turned around to find Captain Park standing right behind him, having somehow passed through what should have been impenetrable defenses. The alien's eyes widened in shock and fear as he realized he was facing something completely outside his experience. "How did you?" the Cathara captain began to say. He never finished the sentence. Within minutes, similar scenes were playing out across all 6 Cathara ships. Human boarding teams moved through the vessels like a plague, appearing wherever they were needed, eliminating threats with surgical precision. The aliens had expected to fight desperate amateurs. Instead, They found themselves facing the products of a death world that had spent millions of years perfecting the art of cooperative hunting. "This is Alpha Team," Captain Park's voice came through the fleet communications. His tone was as calm as if he were reporting on a training exercise. "Cathera, flagship bridge, secured. All hostile forces neutralized." Similar reports came in from the other ships. "Beta Team, engine room secured. Gamma Team, weapons systems disabled. Delta Team, prisoner holds located." Admiral Kim listened to the reports from his command chair, unsurprised by the efficiency of his Marines. The Cathara had made the fatal mistake of threatening innocent people in front of humans. Now they were learning what 10 million years of evolutionary warfare looked like when it was unleashed. The wolves had been released, and the hunt was almost over. The Cathara slavers were starting to panic. Their carefully planned raid was falling apart as human Marines cut through their defenses like they weren't even there. In desperation, the surviving Cathara commanders made a decision that they thought would save them. They would use the Zephyrian prisoners as shields. Captain Vex, the Cathara leader, dragged a group of terrified Zephyrian families into the main cargo bay of his ship. The gentle blue-skinned aliens huddled together, their large eyes filled with confusion and fear. They still didn't understand why anyone would want to hurt them. "Attention human warriors," Captain Vex broadcast through the ship's communication system, pressing his clawed weapon against a young Zephyrian's head. "Stop your advance, or we will execute these pathetic creatures, one by one." The Cathara expected the humans to freeze, to hesitate, to start negotiating like civilized species always did when innocent lives were threatened. After all, that's how it had worked with every other species they had encountered, but they had never encountered humans before. Lieutenant Commander Bei Sung-ho crouched in a maintenance shaft directly above the cargo bay, listening to the Cathara captain's threats. Through his helmet communicator, through a tiny camera inserted through a ventilation grate, he could see the entire scene below. "Control, this is Shadow Team," he whispered into his microphone. "I have visual on 37 Zephyrian hostages in Cargo Bay Alpha, 12 Cathara guards, armed with energy weapons. Copy that, Shadow Team," came the reply from Captain Park. "What's your assessment?" Bay studied the layout carefully. His enhanced combat armor's computer was already calculating angles, distances, and timing. "Simultaneous strike from 6 entry points. We can neutralize all threats without harming civilians." "You sure about that?" Captain Park asked. "That's a lot of hostages in a small space." "Sir," Bay replied calmly, "we're humans. This is what we do." While Captain Vex was making his threats, he had no idea that human special forces teams were already moving into position throughout his ship. They traveled through air ducts, crawled along the outside of the hull, and slipped through spaces that the Cathara had never imagined anyone could use. Sergeant Pak Ji-1 positioned herself above a ceiling panel, watching 3 Cathara guards through her scope. Corporal Lee Dongmin found a perfect firing position behind a cargo container. Private Yoon Hae-jin crawled through a ventilation shaft that would put her directly behind the main group of slavers. The Cathara had designed their ship to keep prisoners contained, but they had never considered that their enemies might approach from every direction at once. They thought in 2 dimensions, forward and back, left and right. Humans thought in 3 dimensions, up, down, and through spaces that didn't officially exist. "All teams in position," Bay reported, waiting for go signal. Captain Vex was still making threats when Lieutenant Commander Bay gave the order, "Execute." What happened next lasted only 4 seconds, but it would become legendary among human military forces. 6 human Marines appeared simultaneously from 6 different directions. They emerged from ceiling panels, from behind cargo containers, through floor grates, and from shadows that shouldn't have been able to hide anyone. The Cathara guards never had a chance to react. Their weapons were disabled before they could fire. They were neutralized with such precision that not one Zephyrian hostage was harmed Captain. Vex found himself staring at Lieutenant Commander Bay, who had somehow appeared right next to him, without making a sound. How? The Cathara captain whispered in shock. We're humans, Bay replied simply. We've been hunting in packs for 10 million years. Similar rescues were happening throughout the Cathara fleet. Every time the slavers tried to use hostages, human special forces teams were already in position to save the innocent while eliminating the threats. Hostages, secured in Cargo Bay Alpha, came Bay's report. Civilians, safe in Detention Area 3, reported another team. Prisoner, transport disabled. All Zephyrians rescued, came a third voice. Within 2 hours of the first human marine setting foot on a Cathara ship, the entire slaver fleet had been neutralized. Some ships were captured intact, others had been destroyed when their crews chose to fight to the end rather than surrender. But the result was the same. Across all 6 vessels, every Zephyrian prisoner was rescued, and not one Cathara slaver survived to threaten innocent people ever again. The galaxy's newest apex predators had just announced their presence in the most definitive way possible. The medical bay of the human flagship Ironclad was bustling with activity, but it was a gentle, caring kind of busy. Human doctors and nurses moved quietly between beds, where rescued Zephyrian colonists were recovering from their ordeal. The contrast couldn't have been more striking. The same hands that had just fought with deadly precision were now tenderly treating wounds and offering comfort. Elder Thalnu stood in the doorway, watching this scene with wonder. The elderly Zephyrian's translucent blue skin seemed to shimmer with emotion as he observed the humans at work. His large, deer-like eyes took in every detail: how gently the human medics handled injured children, how patiently they explained procedures through the translation devices, how they smiled and offered reassurance, even when the aliens couldn't understand their words. Dr. Song Yunhan knelt beside a young Zephyrian, who couldn't have been more than the equivalent of a human 8-year-old. The child's arm was badly bruised, from where a Cathara had grabbed her, but Dr. Song worked with infinite patience, using a medical scanner to check for internal injuries. It's okay, little one, Dr. Song said softly, even though she knew the child couldn't understand Korean without the translator. We're going to take good care of you. The young Zephyrian looked up at her with those huge, innocent eyes and made a sound that the translator interpreted as "Thank you, kind one." Elder Thalnu watched this interaction and felt his mind struggling to process what he had witnessed over the past few hours. These humans had rescued his people with a level of violence and efficiency that terrified him. He had seen the recordings from the Kithara ships, human warriors moving through corridors like deadly shadows, eliminating threats with surgical precision. But now those same humans were treating Zephyrian injuries with the gentleness one might use with newborn babies. Admiral Kim entered the medical bay to check on the rescued civilians. He moved from bed to bed, speaking quietly with his medical staff and asking about each patient's condition. His uniform still showed scorch marks from the battle, but his manner with the Zephyrian survivors was that of a concerned grandfather. Elder Thalnu gathered his courage and approached the human leader. His people had appointed him as their speaker because he was old enough to remember the ancient stories, wise enough to ask important questions. Admiral Kim, he said, his voice transmitted through the universal translator. May I speak with you? Admiral Kim turned and smiled warmly. Of course, Elder Thalnu. How are your people doing? They are healing, thanks to your doctors, the Zephyrian replied. But I must ask you something that troubles my mind. What's that? Elder Thalnu gestured around the medical bay, then toward the corridor where human marines stood guard. Your species shows such incredible kindness to us. Your healers work with gentle hands. Your soldiers risk their lives to protect strangers. But I also saw the recordings of what you did to the Cathara. He paused, struggling to find words for concepts his peaceful species had never needed to consider. You showed such efficiency in destroying our captors. Such complete and absolute force. How do you balance these two natures? How can the same people who comfort our children also be capable of such devastating warfare? Admiral Kim was quiet for a moment, considering the question carefully. He looked around the medical bay, at his people, caring for the rescued aliens, then at the Marines standing guard, to ensure no harm could come to the survivors. Elder Thalnu, he said finally, let me ask you something. Do you love your children? Of course, the Zephyrian replied immediately. More than life itself. And if something threatened to hurt your children, what would you do? Elder Thalnu thought about this. I would try to reason with it. I would offer it whatever it wanted. I would beg it to stop. Admiral Kim nodded. Those are good instincts from a peaceful people. But here's what humans learned over millions of years of evolution. Sometimes evil cannot be reasoned with. Sometimes monsters only understand one language. He gestured toward a young Zephyrian being treated by Dr. Song. True mercy toward the innocent requires absolute mercilessness toward those who would harm them. We are kind to those who deserve kindness, and we become exactly what evil deserves when it threatens the helpless. Elder Thalnu considered these words. So you show no mercy to the cruel, so that you can show infinite mercy to the innocent. Exactly, Admiral Kim replied. A shepherd must be gentle with his sheep, but he must also be the wolf's worst nightmare. The Zephyrian elder looked around the medical bay once more, finally beginning to understand these strange, contradictory humans who had saved his people. The news spread across the galaxy faster than anyone could have imagined. Within 72 hours of the Cathara Syndicate's destruction, every major species in known space had heard the story. The galactic communication networks buzzed with reports, rumors, and wild speculation about the mysterious humans who had appeared from nowhere to annihilate one of the most feared criminal organizations in the galaxy. Ambassador Lim had sat in her newly established office aboard the diplomatic vessel Harmony, staring at a holographic display that showed incoming communication requests. The number kept climbing. 847, 848, 849, every few seconds. Another alien species was trying to contact humanity. Her assistant, diplomatic officer Park Seogen, looked overwhelmed as he tried to categorize all the requests. Ma'am, we're getting calls from species I've never even heard of. The Altarians want to hire us as bodyguards. The Vegan Confederacy is offering us mining rights to 3-star systems in exchange for protection from pirates. Ambassador Ling rubbed her temples. 3 days ago, humanity had been completely unknown in galactic politics. Now every species in the galaxy wanted to talk to them. What about the major powers? The Galactic Council. They're being more cautious, Park replied. But even they're sending diplomatic feelers. The Council wants to schedule formal first contact ceremonies. The Trade Federation is asking about our military rental rates. Lim had to laugh at that. Military rental rates? They think we're mercenaries. Based on the reports they're getting, ma'am, I think they're not sure what we are. The reports had indeed been spectacular. The story of how 12 human ships had completely destroyed 6 Cathara vessels in less than 3 hours was spreading like wildfire. But it wasn't just the military victory that had everyone talking. It was the manner of the victory. The Cathara Syndicate had been operating for over 2 centuries. They had raided hundreds of worlds, enslaved millions of beings, and destroyed entire civilizations. They were known for their cruelty, their advanced weapons, and their complete ruthlessness. Most species simply paid them tribute rather than fight, and the humans had wiped them out. Without losing a single ship. Communication officer Li Jinwu approached the ambassador's desk with another urgent message. Ma'am, we're getting reports from across the galaxy. Criminal organizations are evacuating entire sectors where they think human ships might patrol. What do you mean? Lim asked. The Crimson Raiders abandoned their base in the Outer Rim when they heard we might be expanding our patrol routes. The slave markets of Kepler Station shut down completely and relocated to the far edge of known space. Pirates are avoiding trade routes just in case they might encounter a human ship. Park looked up from his communications console. Ma'am, I'm also getting reports that some species are changing their behavior toward their neighbors. The aggressive species that used to raid weaker civilizations are suddenly becoming much more diplomatic. Ambassador Lim stood up and walked to the main view screen, which showed the vast expanse of space around them. Somewhere out there, billions of intelligent beings were trying to figure out what humanity meant for their future. What's the common theme in all these communications? She asked. Protection, Park replied immediately. Everyone wants to know if we'll protect them from the bad guys. Some are offering payment, some are offering resources, some are just begging. Lee nodded in agreement. There's also fear, ma'am. Some of the more aggressive species are asking about peace treaties. They want to make sure we know they're not threats to peaceful civilizations. Ambassador Lim considered this. Humanity had never intended to become the galaxy's police force. They had simply responded to a distress call from innocent people in danger. But their response had been so decisive, so complete, that it had fundamentally changed the balance of power in the galaxy. Ma'am, Park said quietly, there's something else. I've been monitoring criminal communication networks, and there's a pattern emerging. What kind of pattern? Criminal organizations are developing new protocols. They call it the human rule, basically. If there's any chance that humans might be in an area, they abandon whatever illegal activity they're doing and leave immediately. Lee pulled up a data display. The effect is remarkable. Piracy rates have dropped by 60% in the sectors near our patrol routes. Slave trading has almost stopped completely in this part of the galaxy. Ambassador Lim realized what was happening. Humanity hadn't just rescued one group of aliens. They had accidentally appointed themselves as the galaxy's new guardians. Whether other species wanted their protection or not, whether humanity had asked for the job or not, the mere possibility that human ships might show up was enough to make criminals think twice. So, she said slowly, we've become the galaxy's protectors just by doing what felt right. Yes, ma'am, Park replied. And judging by these communication requests, most of the galaxy is very happy about that. 6 months had passed since the rescue of the Zephyrian colonists, and the galaxy had become a very different place. The gentle blue-skinned aliens had built a new home on a beautiful world they called New Harmony, and their society was flourishing like never before. Elder Thalnu walked through the bustling streets of their main city, marveling at how much had changed. Zephyrian children played in the parks without fear. Artists created beautiful sculptures and paintings that celebrated both their own culture and their friendship with humanity. Farmers grew crops in fields that stretched to the horizon, no longer worried that raiders might come to steal their harvest or capture their families. All of this was possible because of the human ships that patrolled their space. Commander Shindu Hyan led Patrol Group 7, a small fleet of 5 human vessels that had been assigned to protect this sector of space. The ships weren't particularly large or intimidating to look at, but their reputation preceded them wherever they went. Pirates, slavers, and other criminals had learned to avoid this entire region of space rather than risk encountering the human guardians. Elder Thalnu made his way to the observation deck of Haven's Watch, the human space station that orbited New Harmony. The station served as both a military base and a diplomatic center, where humans and Zephyrians worked together to coordinate the protection of peaceful species throughout the sector. Captain Kong Jiwoo was standing at the main observation window, looking out at the stars. The human officer had become a good friend to Elder Thalnu over the past months. Despite being a warrior from a death world, Captain Kong had shown remarkable patience in learning about Zephyrian culture and customs. Good morning, Captain, Elder. Falnu said as he approached. "Good morning, Elder," Captain Kang replied with a warm smile. "How are the new agricultural districts coming along?" "Wonderfully," the Zephyrian replied. "Our farmers say they expect the harvest to be 30% larger than last year. When people don't have to worry about raiders, they can focus on growing food instead of hiding." Captain Kong nodded approvingly. "That's exactly what we hoped." "What happened?" Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent chime from the communication console. Lieutenant Park Min-young, the station's communications officer, looked up from her station with concern. "Captain, we're receiving a distress signal from the Kepler system," she reported. "It's coming from a refugee convoy. They're reporting attacks by unknown hostiles." Elder Thalnu felt his heart sink. Even after all these months, he still felt pain whenever he heard about innocent people in danger. "Those poor souls," he said quietly. Captain Kong's expression had already shifted from friendly conversation to focused determination. "How many ships in the convoy?" he asked Lieutenant Park. 17 civilian vessels, sir. They're carrying approximately 40,000 refugees from the border conflicts in the Rigel sector, and the attackers. Unknown conflagration, sir. The refugees described them as heavily armed raiders with fast attack ships. Captain Kong turned to Elder Thalnu. "I'm sorry to cut our conversation short, but we need to respond to this immediately." Elder Thalnu looked at his human friend and asked the question that he somehow already knew the answer to. "Will you answer their call for help?" Captain Kong's smile returned, but now it carried a different quality. It was still warm when he looked at the Zephyrian Elder, but there was something else there too. Something that reminded Elder Thalnu that his friend was descended from the apex predators of a Death's world. "Always, Elder," Captain Kong replied. "The wolves of Earth guard the flock of stars now." Within minutes, Patrol Group 7 was preparing to depart. The human ships moved with the same efficient coordination that Elder Thalnu had witnessed during his people's rescue. Every crew member knew their job. Every system functioned perfectly. Every weapon was ready. As Elder Thalnu watched the human fleet jump to hyperspace, he reflected on how much the galaxy had changed. Before humanity's arrival, distress calls often went unanswered. Peaceful species lived in constant fear of raiders and slavers. The strong preyed upon the weak without consequence. Now there were guardians among the stars, protectors who asked for nothing in return except the chance to help those who couldn't help themselves. The communication console chimed, again with another incoming message. This time, it was a grateful transmission from a trade convoy that had just passed safely through what used to be pirate-infested space. "Thank you, Haven's Watch," came the alien voice through the translator. "Our families are safe because of human protection." Elder Thalnu smiled as he listened to the message. The galaxy had indeed learned what it meant to awaken sleeping Deathworlders. But what it had discovered was not monsters or conquerors. It had found guardians. The wolves of Earth would continue to patrol the stars, carrying the same message they had delivered to the Kithara 6 months ago. No mercy for those who prey on the innocent. Infinite protection for those who cannot protect themselves. And the galaxy was a safer place because of it.